I couldn't go live for like, I think it was like 2 weeks.
They told me 30 days.
30 days.
Nobody anticipated that tensions would escalate to the extent that they did, even though they had been growing for days. One minute, the group was spotted smiling and dancing with male DCs, and then chaos broke out before anyone could intervene. It's shocking that things went so wrong that, just when we believed Yendi Smith-Harris and Mendeecees were enjoying a tranquil holiday in Mexico, they ended up in handcuffs. You did read correctly. A furious dispute swiftly descended into a violent altercation, at which point fists were flying. When local officials intervened, Mendeecees was hauled away in handcuffs in front of Yandy, which was the most disturbing aspect. Which cast member was involved in this significant fallout? And more significantly, what will happen to Mendeecees next are the key questions at hand. As Yendi Smith-Harris, Mendeecees, and a few other cast members gathered for what was meant to be a much-needed arrest, stay tuned for all the information, eyewitness reports, and never-before-seen details. The vacation was intended to be a combination of work and play, with some filming and lots of downtime. Away from the mayhem and chaos that had been closely observing them, they were thrilled to see their favorite couple enjoying fun. Nobody had, however, expected that this alleged vacation would swiftly devolve into an explosive catastrophe that would lead to M being handcuffed. Everything seemed to go well at first. While she was relaxing by the pool at the resort's private bar, Mendeecees were chatting and making jokes with the guys, despite the fact that she looked stunning in a chic white summer dress. Witnesses said that although it appeared as though they were all finally spending some peaceful time together, with music playing and drinks flowing, the seeds of conflict had already been planted and tensions were already growing behind the scenes. The first indications of problems started earlier that afternoon when M and a particular cast member got into a furious disagreement. Even though the encounter wasn't instantly explosive, others who heard it characterized it as strained. Identity is still being kept under wraps. Despite his subdued speech and apparent body language, Mendeecees was clearly upset. He was even observed interfering at one point, putting a hand on Mendeecees' arm in an apparent attempt to soothe him, but it didn't seem to work. According to insiders, Mendeecees has always been sensitive about his past legal troubles, and that's when the disagreement started. Mendeecees, according to one report, took. The initial argument was obviously unresolved, despite the fact that there was no physical altercation. In an apparent attempt to calm their displeasure, males were later observed pacing the resort while shaking their heads and grumbling to themselves. Then came dinner, which was served in a classy, private beachside eatery with a great outdoor dining space for a relaxed meal. The cast appeared to be in a good mood on the surface. Mendeecees began with a straightforward back and forth with the same cast member with whom he had previously disagreed on the topic of his history once more. This was made possible by the beverages and the relaxed atmosphere the cast member created. Yandy and I were seated at one end of the long table, and the actors were drinking and conversing when they came. The rest of the actors were conversing and laughing, but the quiet was misleading because when the actors were served, the tension that had been building all day finally exploded. As he gently set down his fork, M's jaw tightened at another smooth comment about how Hustler was always a hustler mid-bite. Just what did you say? Yandy could immediately sense the quiet at the table. Gaz went between Mindy's forearm and the other man. But it was too late. Come on, let's not do this right now, she added. A smile spread across the cast member's face as he said, "Some people never truly change. They just get better at hiding it." The local security personnel, aware that the situation was about to worsen, approached with caution. "What are you going to do?" The cast members came closer rather than running away. "Are you going to tell everyone who you really are?" It was that. Before anyone could even respond, Mendeecees rushed forward and turned the tables. It was like the stillness before a storm, low enough to be scary. "That's your second chance to assault me like that." As the MC's fist hit his face, one of the cast members stumbled back into another table. The man swiftly recovered and then hit M in the jaw. When Yami yelled, "Stop, stop, Mendeecees," it was too late. The two men were engaged in a full-fledged brawl, slamming into each other. As the actors hurried towards the wooden deck, knocking over chairs in their haste to get away from the fight, the restaurant staff went into a frenzy, with some hiding and others phoning for security. One of the security agents pushed the other away, and security hurried in to try to separate the two. A nearby bar cart's bottles toppled over as they wrestled, and the sound of glass shattering filled the room. Eventually, with the assistance of multiple security officers, the two men were separated by PR. Other tables and behind the bar, customers either ran away or took out their phones to document the chaos as it occurred. Thesis was incensed. Other cast members were attempting to soothe Yandy, who was now crying and yelling at Mendeecees to stop before things went worse, while staff members were chattering excitedly among themselves while guests continued to shoot. But while sirens rang all night long, just when everyone believed the worst was over and the dust was starting to settle, the restaurant's entrance was suddenly filled with police lights that flashed red and blue. The beach supper had moved from lively to tumultuous, and for a few moments it threatened to spiral farther out of control. Yandy remained still, her wide eyes reflecting the police cruisers that were coming. She began to panic, and her heart began to speed. Throughout the restaurant, flashing red and blue lights cast absurd shadows while sirens wailed through the muggy Mexican night, blending with the screams of shocked onlookers and the sound of glass shattering. Yandy dragged him out of here while the cast member he had battled with leaned against a chair that had been overturned. Although one of the actors said in fear, "Yandy," when her gaze strayed to the policemen who were now nearing the entrance, the reality of what had transpired hit her hard. A respite from the stress of home was provided by the peaceful retreat. Standing nearby, still gripping his fists and breathing heavily, was Mendeecees. The restaurant workers hurried to meet the first cop who entered, speaking fast in Spanish, as the police were drawing closer. The manager threw furious motions at the cast, the two people in the center of it all, the destroyed tables, and the broken glasses. This was not going to end in a minor fight. This was serious. The laws were different. The consequences might have been worse. And the United States wasn't Mexico here. After being startled out of her daydream, member Yandy hurried to the men's BC. She grasped his elbow and shook his hands, whispering furiously, "We have to go, we can't stay here." The cast member continued to stare at him and smile as though he had gained something by allowing things to come this far, but the police officers were oblivious to her words. Despite all of this, he kept going ahead, his fists still ready for battle. MC didn't appear to comprehend her urgent tone, which made it worse. As if to arrest him, a number of officers approached them before he could respond, pointing at MCs and speaking loudly. Yandy leaped ahead of me as soon as one of the officers raised his handcuffs and held his hands up defensively. Her voice transformed to one of rage as she sobbed, understanding that he was simply protecting himself and wasn't to blame. Wait. However, her remarks had no effect on the police, and they were fed up. Stepped in and threatened to kidnap him by force if he didn't join them right away, saying he had been detained for assault. Arrest? No, this is not possible. Yandy's voice wavered as she turned to face the Mendeecees, who appeared to be about to rebel. But something within him shifted when he saw Yandy's fright on her face and her fear in her eyes. His jaw was clenched in frustration, and he was angry and worried about the potential effects on his family and future, but he moved in a nice way as he gently raised his hands. The cops yanked him around, putting his arms behind his back, and swiftly placed the handcuffs on his wrists. All at once, I was no longer a tourist, but a man who was about to be taken into custody and held abroad. The cold metal clicked into position, and she attempted to move between the officers, VCs, and men. He could not be captured, reverberating through the ether. He was merely defending himself, and this isn't feasible. This wasn't initiated by him. Despite Yandy's pleas, the officers disregarded her and dragged MVs to the door since they weren't paying attention. The remaining members of the cast stood there, not knowing what to do. Some took out their phones to capture the incident on camera, while others mumbled to one another, obviously surprised at how rapidly things had gone out of hand. After arguing with Mendeecees, the cast member leaned back in his chair. Mendeecees was now suffering the consequences because he had annoyed and irritated him. Yandy would not stand by and watch this unfold. In the hope that someone would hear her, she hurried after the officers as they brought the M's outside, yelling at them in terrible English and Spanish. Mendeecees was being escorted to a waiting police van while flashing police lights lit the road and inquisitive bystanders gathered outside the restaurant. Please, he doesn't commit crimes. He did nothing wrong, and you don't get it. Release him. The officers remained calm when they opened the back of the van and pushed the MCs inside. Before the doors closed, MCs turned to face Yandy, and his eyes showed a mix of anger and sadness. He mouthed, "I'm sorry," but Yandy was crying, and the police siren's loudness overpowered his statement that she was becoming more and more desperate. While others were just watching Yandy trail closely, others were filming. When Yandy's heart burst, that is, she had witnessed Mendeecees' legal struggles, highs and lows, as well as his handcuffs. But this time it felt different because they were dealing with a foreign judicial system in Mexico rather than the US or her native country. As the cops departed, Yandy stood in tears on the street, unsure of what to do or how to respond. The rest of the cast was still in shock as she was powerless to stop the love of her life from being chased off into the night. When the staff began to remove the planes for air and people began to gently leave while chatting among themselves about the chaos they had just seen, they returned to the restaurant. However, after everything they had endured together, Yandy was not going to let guys from DC rot in a Mexican prison. The only thing left to do was figure out how to get her boyfriend home, so she wiped away her tears, took a deep breath, and got out her phone to call a lawyer and work them out. "We're going to fix this," she said to herself in a whisper. The impact of Mendeecees' arrest was profound. Despite his release on bond, the tale had already taken on a life of its own. She called the number, her hands still shaking, and said, "Without you, I won't be leaving Mexico." Exaggerated headlines were flying from newspapers, and speculations were rife on social media. Some said he was a setup, while others said he was out of control. This, however, was obviously not going to be settled anytime soon. In their hotel suite, Mendeecees chose to read the endless. Gazing at the city lights, Yandy stood close to the glass, her arms folded. Her tone was tense as she stated, "We need to be careful about how we react to this." Mendeecees rubbed his temples and groaned. "They're waiting for us to make a mistake, you know." He had a ton of messages on his phone from friends, family, and even some cast members asking for information or support regarding the real situation of his body, which had deteriorated the night before. It was then that the producer of the show called, and Yandy's phone buzzed. "Yudi, we must overcome this obstacle. The network is going crazy. This is becoming more of a controversy than we anticipated." This was her response after a moment of uncertainty, and you felt something would happen because Yami's eyes narrowed more than you expected. Quit talking and let them give you whatever story they want. Yandy warns us not to simply respond emotionally since it is what they want. We must have control over the story. Yandy's jaw tightened as the producer exacerbated the tensions between the other cast members and the NBCs. As things had gotten out of control and they were scrambling to fix the damage, the producer went on, "We would like you to have an EXC exclusive interview with MCs, give you a version of events, and make it apparent that this was not a careless act," even though she had a sickening suspicion that they knew exactly what they were doing. The MCs shook their heads and said, "They don't care about cleaning up their mess." But Yandy muttered, "They just don't want their ratings to drop." She realized that they couldn't stay silent because DC was already being judged by the court of public opinion, and if they didn't take charge of the narrative, someone else would. Yandy looked at Mendeecees, who was watching her closely, and said, "We'll think about it for a while." The couple decided to attend the interview the next day. A renowned journalist was brought in to ask the pointed questions on a screen behind them, and their suite was equipped with cameras. The interview began, and the shaky security footage showed the cast member pushing me repeatedly before he lost it. The reporter turned to the MDs and asked, "What was going through your head at the time?" MDs took a long breath. "And I must admit that I was trying to get out of Mexico. I came to enjoy myself and unwind with my wife, not to be involved in drama, but I could tell that things were getting heated." Yandy interrupted M before he could say anything. "But look, I won't sit here and pretend that drama isn't what reality TV is all about. And when people are under a lot of pressure and their emotions are running high, things can quickly go wrong. I won't take pride in it, but that man kept pushing and challenging me. And yes, I did lose my temper." The reporter nodded. "Many people say that you were set up and that everything was planned to increase ratings. What do you think?" Men sighed, looked down for a second, then turned to the camera. "I regret letting someone get the better of me. I regret putting my family through this. Do I regret defending myself?" No, but the interview went viral within hours. Fans' comments were divided, with some expressing support for NBC and others remaining skeptical, but there was no doubting that the story had reached a new level. Just when they thought things were starting to calm down, another bombshell was released, posing as the truth. Sitting in his car and staring directly into the camera, the victim, a cast member who got into a confrontation with MCs, went live on Instagram saying, "Dude, I was just kidding around. I didn't expect that he would really attack me in that way, and I'm the villain now." He went on, "Man, hurry up. The whole story is unknown to you all." By implying that there was more to the altercation than a few irate comments, he implied that some individuals dislike it when you find out their secrets. People began to wonder whatever secrets he was talking about, whether Yandy and Mendeecees had more to the narrative than they were discussing, whether this battle revealed something more important, and Yandy's irate brewing threw her phone down and screamed, "This is getting out of control." He's attempting to alter the situation and portray himself as the victim. MDC shook his head and let him continue, saying that his sole goal is to remain up to date. MDC crossed his arms and leaned back. "And then we went about our business as usual, which is to keep things moving." Yandy sighed. She understood how this game worked, but she wished she could be as calm as he was. Once a rumor started, it was almost impossible to stop it. They left Mexico a few days later, hoping to avoid the chaos. But once they arrived at the USS, paparazzi were waiting with cameras flashing and questions flying. What if he is believed to have pushed something? The airport, "Did you pay to be released from prison? Will the show fire you? And what is the true reason for the fight?" NC pushed through the front with Yandy at his side, but this wasn't the end of it. She became aware that night, when they were sitting in their house, exhausted from the experience, Yandy turned to M and smiled after thinking about it for a while. But why didn't both of Yandy's eyebrows go up? "Are you saying that we allow them to talk and make assumptions, but we expose our own secret when this occurs?" One thing is certain though, as this story develops, the drama is far from over. Yandy watched him closely and saw that he was considering strategy rather than just damage control. Suddenly, she realized that this was more than just a scandal. It was an opportunity to turn the story around and keep people guessing and watching, because reality TV drama wasn't just a problem. It was a source of power, and they were going to take advantage of it. Control the story, or will the rumors get worse? What did the cast member mean when he hinted at a deeper mystery? Do you think MB was tricked, or did he let his emotions control him? What do you think will happen next? Please share your thoughts in the space provided below to ensure you don't miss the next exciting update. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and enable notifications. You won't believe what you'll see. In this tense movie, what happens next is, we are just beginning. Listen carefully.